Hi guys, this is Fiona from IELTS with Fiona and the Members Academy. It's January and the topic of money seems to be coming up quite a lot. So I've decided to devote January to all things connected with the vocabulary of money. It comes up a lot in IELTS. So, for example, in the speaking, you might talk about your spending, saving, shopping habits, gifts, markets. And in part 3, it goes a bit deeper, talking about advertising, consumerism, and business. In writing, we've covered task 2 examples about if it's worth saving money, should managers get high salaries, should we save for retirement. In academic task 1, there are loads of graphs about things like online sales, budgets, school spending, charities, annual income, things like that. General training letters, you often have to ask for a refund or maybe a bank loan or recommend sponsorship. In listening, not so many, but in part 1, you often have to ask about prices, like for a gym or library membership. In the academic reading test, the texts tend to be related to business and the economy or marketing and sales. And then in the general reading test, it comes up a lot. Sometimes it's about advice on how to pay, for example, a water bill or claim for a delayed train. But very often, and this is what we're going to look at today, it's about things related to workplace benefits, again, pensions, pay rises, and how to claim for government benefits. So that's what we're looking at today, because it's another huge area of the money topic. I started my research thinking I could just do one lesson and one unit on this. But in the end, there was so much that actually on my website, there's a whole lesson devoted to the speaking topic of money. And there's another whole lesson devoted to writing task 2 on the topic of money. So today I'm focusing on reading. Now, I think this is a really important topic, maybe especially if you're doing general training. But again, the vocabulary itself is just an important area that you have to know about, basically. So before we start, I think I'll give you some of these key words so at least you've got an idea of what I'm talking about. So these are 2 different tests, but they're both about maternity allowance. So that's applying for money from the government or the company that you work for, your workplace, when you are pregnant or when you go on maternity leave. Now, different countries have different systems, so I think this background information will help you a bit and you'll feel more comfortable with this kind of text in the reading test. So key vocabulary here is that some people are eligible for this money. Now, if you're eligible, then you have the right to do something. You satisfy the conditions, you meet the requirements, and the whole text is about what those requirements are. And if you meet those requirements, let's say you've worked for the company for more than 12 months, then you are entitled to do something or to have something. So this keyword entitled and eligible and eligibility all mean really the same thing, that you have the right to certain benefits or privileges. synonym for that could be that you qualify for these benefits. And that means you are entitled to have them. It's your right to have them, as long as you meet the criteria, which could be based on your income, your employment status, your health, your family situation, your personal circumstances, basically. So those are the key words. And also one more: if you are eligible, if you are entitled and you qualify for these benefits, well, then you have to claim benefits. Claim is you have to apply for them. And in the UK, in Britain, it means you have to apply for these grants or loans or paychecks from the government. Usually when you're on a low income, that's a key word. So if you don't have a high salary, or if you are unemployed or disabled, or you have specific needs like caring for someone, so this entitles you to a specific type of government payment. And it comes up in the general training test. So let's have a look at it. It's actually quite confusing, I think, because there are lots of different types of benefits depending on your circumstances. So the title is Maternity Allowance for Working Women. Allowance is the word they give, but they also shorten it to MA. Let's have a look at the questions first. And there are 5 questions. They are gap fill, and the answers are all in the text, and you can use 2 words and or a number. So the first one is the maximum amount of money a woman can get each week is, and there's a pound sign. So you're looking for an amount of money, and it's the maximum. And this comes up a lot, and there are synonyms we'll find in the text. I also noticed that in the listening part 1, where they use maximum or they say at least, minimum, things like that. When you look at the text, it says you could get either £140.98 a week or 90% of your average weekly earnings, whichever is less. Now, I find that confusing because if you don't have a sum of money in mind, then you don't know which one is less. It doesn't matter. Just grab that number, £140.98 a week is the number, the maximum amount that you can get. Next one, number 10. Now, this is almost like grammatical. It starts with being, B-E-I-N-G, being. So that tells us that it's followed by an adjective. It says being something for a time does not necessarily mean that a woman will not be eligible for maternity allowance. Grammatically, that's tricky. Let's just go to the text. It says, you might get maternity allowance for 39 weeks if one of the following applies. You're employed, you're self-employed, or you've recently stopped working. So you have to meet one of those conditions. Either you're employed or you're self-employed and you pay specific insurance things. Don't worry about that. Or you've recently stopped working. So you might think, oh, I can't get this allowance. Those 3 things don't apply to me. But the next sentence says, you may still qualify even if you've recently stopped working. It doesn't matter if you had different jobs or periods when you were unemployed. So unemployed is the adjective you need. Being unemployed does not mean that you're not eligible, basically. You may still be eligible to get money even if you were unemployed. Next, in order to claim, a woman must send a something as evidence of income. So you have to prove that you had income in order to claim this benefit. And the verb, the modal verb there is that you must send something. So what do you usually have to send? Well, usually as evidence, you would send evidence from your employer. What do we call that? Let's have a look. There's a heading which says how to claim. It says you will need an MA1 claim form. Remember, MA is maternity allowance, available online. You can print this, fill it in online. You also need, there's the synonym for must, you also need to provide a pay slip. So that's it, a pay slip. You could guess it really as evidence of your income. Synonym for evidence is proof. Now there's a second proof that you need, and this is the next question. In order to claim, a woman may need to provide a something as evidence of the due date. The due date, D-U-E, is the date when the baby is due. Where can you get evidence of the baby's due date? Well, of course, from a doctor. So let's look again. You need proof of the baby's due date, such as a doctor's letter. And that is the answer. It's 2 words. So don't put a, just put doctor's letter. Finally, payment may be affected by differences in someone's something, such as a return to work. And the local job centre must be informed. So, of course, if you go back to work and start earning your salary again, you can't keep claiming this money. So you must tell the job centre. So remember, we talked about all of this depends on different circumstances. So when you look across to the text, it says you should report any changes to your circumstances. And that's the word, circumstances. For example, if you go back to work. So notice the difference between active and passive. So in the actual form, it's designed to be easy to read. So it's all active. You should report changes if you go back to work to your local job centre. However, in our test, it's a bit more formal. It's passive. Payment may be affected. The job centre must be informed. It's passive. So that's it. It's only 5 questions. It's one of those early texts where there aren't that many questions, but they're certainly not easy. So to reinforce what we've learnt today, we're going to look at the second one, and this is book 14, test 1, passage 1. Sorry, I forgot to mention the other one was book 15, test 1, passage 2. So you'll see the similarities immediately. It's called maternity benefits. If you are expecting a baby, there are a number of benefit schemes that could help you financially. So remember the word benefit, a benefit system. It's the money that the government gives you. There are different, it's not like task 2, advantages and disadvantages, benefits and drawbacks. It's a different meaning of that word benefit, although it's connected. Obviously, it's a bonus. It's a positive thing. It's money that you get to help you in different circumstances. It reminds us eligibility differs for each individual scheme. So again, you've got to read the different schemes quite carefully. They talk about statutory maternity pay. So this is the one that everybody gets. SMP is the short form. And it says again, you may be entitled to statutory maternity pay. This is a weekly payment. And you can get it both before and after the birth of your baby. It can be paid for up to 39 weeks. So I'm thinking that must be the maximum. Let's look at the questions. So the questions here, I'm going to the second set of questions. They're very similar, very similar. This time it's not a gap fill. It's more like a short answer question. It says, what is the minimum period you must have worked for an employer in order to be eligible, there's that word again, for SMP, the minimum period, and you're allowed 2 words and or a number. So I'm looking for like weeks or months this time, not money. And what does it say? You are entitled to SMP if you've been employed by the same company for at least, that's the minimum, 26 weeks. That's your answer. It's 26 weeks, and that's what you write. Next question. For how long is SMP payable every week as a percentage of your average weekly earnings, as a percentage? So when you find the percentage there, it says you'll receive 90% of your weekly earnings for 6 weeks. And that's the answer, 6 weeks. Now the next question says, what sum is payable every week as the second part? So we saw that you get 90% for the first 6 weeks. And in the text, it says, then you will receive £112.75 per week, weekly, for the remaining 33 weeks. So that is your answer again. This time you must write that pound sign because it's not given to you. In the first one, they wrote the pound sign, so you don't need to write it. Next question. What is the maximum length of time MA is payable? Now, remember MA, maternity allowance, and they tell you again MA. So we're looking now for the maximum length of time. Before we saw minimum period, now maximum. So we're looking for, again, a number, an amount of time. There's lots of options here. We're just looking for how long you can get maternity allowance, and it says can be paid for up to 39 weeks. And when you see that up to, that is a signal really that it means the maximum length of time. So the answer is 39 weeks. It gets easier now. Where can MA forms be obtained? So there's your passive again in the questions. What does it mean? Basically, where can you get these maternity allowance forms. It says you can find maternity allowance forms at antenatal clinics. Antenatal is one word, so write both words, antenatal clinics. Next question. Apart from income, what else is considered when assessing how much child tax credit is paid? What else is considered? Now, this is about child tax credit, so move down to the next benefit. Again, I think this is maybe a UK thing. Child tax credit. So, if you are on a low income and responsible for at least one child, you may also be entitled to child tax credit. The amount you get will depend on your personal circumstances and income. So probably you can guess this. They only consider your income and your personal circumstances. That's 2 words, and that is the answer. Finally, what are Sure Start maternity payments? So again, look at the heading. You're only allowed 2 words. Let me read it to you. See if you can guess the correct answer. It says, if you get benefits or child tax credit because you're on a low income, then you may be entitled to Sure Start maternity payments. These are individual grants to help towards the cost of a new baby. These are individual grants. So that's what they are. They are grants. Now, when we did the whole topic of money, we talked about the difference between a grant and a loan. It was one of those easily confused. So a loan you have to pay back. A grant or grant you don't have to pay back. So you can get a grant. And that is the answer. Copy it exactly as it is. It's plural. I think you could write individual. I don't think you'd lose points. But in the answer, it simply says individual. It does not say individual. It simply says grants. So that was quite tough if the topic is new to you. But hopefully when you see that now, if you get this kind of question in general training, then you will understand it a little bit better. If you're not doing general training, we have learnt a lot of vocabulary today. For example, eligible, entitled, qualify, claim, and allowance. Let me know if you've got any questions or if you found any other texts that you'd like me to cover. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.